and you can use the chat function to talk to us at the bottom tab.
So we are now recording, just so everyone is aware. Thanks, Angela.
So who we are the California Working Family Coalition. It's an alliance of organizations united in the belief that all people should have the time and resources to care for themselves and each other. What we do, so through organizing, advocacy, and education, we are fighting for a world where all workers and family members have access to paid leave to bond with new children and care for our families. And this is our team. Katie and I already introduced ourselves, but Jenia, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Angelica. So I'm Jenia Cassidy. I'm the director of the California Work and Family Coalition, and really excited to be here and be working with the California Breastfeeding Coalition on just expanding information about paid leave.
So our goals for today, our first goal is to get a better understanding of advocacy and go over the goals for Virtual Advocacy Day, which is next week on Thursday, and understand the connection between breastfeeding, paid family leave, and the new laws, as well as to learn what to expect when attending a meeting with the legislator. So Legislative Advocacy 101 and Advocacy 3 goals. So the state of California, our government consists of 80 state assembly districts, 40 state senate districts, and 1 governor. We all have a state assembly member and a state senator who are elected to represent us. We are also all constituents of an elected representative. A constituent is a person who lives or works in a state assembly or state senate district. And you can find out who your state representative is through this website through the link that we have available. So why meet with legislators? Your legislator will create and or vote for or against policies that impact everyone in their district. So breastfeeding and chest feeding advocates raise concerns about breastfeeding parents being told to pump in the bathroom, and then SB 142 was passed in response. Legislators also document what issues and concerns their constituents call their office about and request meetings to discuss. And our legislators work for us. We elect them. So it's great to meet with them and discuss what issues we have or see in our community. And so the Advocacy Day goals for next week are for CBC members and constituents to share their personal story and connect with legislators. Educate legislators about the importance of breastfeeding human milk and what social supports and policies support breastfeeding. The last goal is to educate legislators about the importance of paid family leave, expanding job protection, which SB 1383 did pass last year with everyone's help, and increase wage replacement, which is the bill we will be working on, AB 123. And the Advocacy Day logistics are, so from 11:30 a.m. through 12:30 p.m., we will welcome, have a brief training. There will be a speaker, and then we will all go into breakout groups and meet each other and decide roles. And from 1:30 p.m. through 3 p.m., that is when the virtual meetings with legislators will happen. And the educational goals are, so basically, you are already an expert on the importance of breastfeeding and chest feeding, human milk feeding. So we want to educate legislators about the kinds of social supports like paid family leave that parents need in order to be able to successfully breastfeed. Other examples of support would be education, lactation accommodations, insurance reimbursement, PPE equipment, and access to donor human milk. So the relationship between breastfeeding and paid family leave. So parental leave is associated with reduced infant and post neonatal mortality, improved breastfeeding rates and duration, increased likelihood of a child attending well baby visits and receiving vaccines. Um, there's also an increased rate and duration of breastfeeding, which is associated with lower rates of infection and sudden infant death syndrome. A baby's first 12 weeks are key for brain development and shape the way a child interacts with their surroundings for their entire life. And in this image, we can see that California, the medium duration of breastfeeding doubled among new mothers who took family leave. There was an increase of 5 to 9 weeks in lower paying jobs and an increase of 5 through 11 weeks in higher paying jobs. And in New Jersey, there was also mothers who took paid leave under the state family leave insurance program, breastfed 1 month longer on average. And now it's Katie or Jenya.
Me. Thanks, Angelica. I think that was really great. And I think it's just so helpful to know how important paid leave is. Just in terms of supporting breastfeeding parents. And I think also, we really need to expand access because it really should be equal for low paying and high paying jobs, and everybody should have equal access. So I'm just going to give a quick kind of overview of the basics of paid family leave. So just to go over what paid family leave is a wage replacement. What it basically does is when you're not getting paid regular wages for work, you can be, and because you're taking time to either bond with a new child or care for a seriously ill family member, you can have up to 8 weeks of paid family leave to do one of those two things. So for people often have questions about, well, who's really eligible for paid family leave? The basic requirement to be eligible to take paid family leave is that you pay into state disability insurance, SDI. And as you can see here on the paycheck, here's an example of how it can be worded different ways. CA, state disability insurance, CA, SDI. And the majority of workers in the state of California do pay into SDI. There are a few exceptions, which I can touch on in a minute. But basically, the other requirement is you pay into this fund and you have a need to take it. You either have a new child, and that can be birth, adoption, or fostering, and the need to care for a seriously ill family member. To qualify, you only need to have earned at least $300 from which SDI deductions were withheld, and it could even be in the recent past. So, if you're earning money and paying into SDI, you should qualify. So one question that we get a lot is, do I need to be a citizen? Does my immigration status weigh in? And no, it doesn't affect eligibility of paid family leave benefits or state disability insurance benefits. If you pay into that fund, that's an insurance fund that should cover you when you take the time off. And just to go over the basics for bonding, the majority right now of paid leave claims are for bonding with new children. And this provides partial pay for parents while they're on leave from work to bond with and care for a newborn, adopted, or foster child. And that's within the first year after birth or the placement of the child in your home. So within that year, you have time to take leave for bonding, and that is both parents would have that time. And right now it is 60 or 70% of your normal weekly wages, and that depends on your pay. For 2020, and it will go up again a little bit for 2021, it's up to $1,300 per week, depending on your wages. And right now, as of last year, it's up to 8 weeks of benefits. So that's great. It used to be 6 weeks and now it's 8 weeks. So another thing to know is that the leave can be taken all at once or in parts. And often for caregiving, more people will divide it up for when they need it. But even for bonding, sometimes parents will decide to take that time, maybe take turns taking that time. A parent might take a little bit at the beginning and a little bit more later in the year. So that is possible to do. The way that you access these benefits is through the EDD, the California Employment Development Department. And you go through their website. There are paper applications for people who need them that you can order from their website, or sometimes you can get them in different places like hospitals, et cetera. But for the most part, people go through the website, and you should do this within 49 days of the event that you needed to take the leave. However, if there was a good reason for putting it off, or you didn't know, sometimes you can appeal that and apply later. But for the most part, you try to do it within 49 days of the time you took the leave. So for caregiving, it's really important. You know, a lot of people don't actually realize that you can take paid family leave for caregiving too. And interestingly enough, as much as we're talking about breastfeeding and the importance for infants and new families, caregiving is something that's happening in people's lives, and people spend more time often caring for a family member than they even do with caring for a new child. So it's really important to know that also paid leave provides partial wage replacement to take time off to care for a seriously ill family member. And that right now can be, as of 2013, it's children, spouses, domestic partners, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, parent-in-law, and siblings. And the reason I say 2013 is that the law that expanded it to more family members passed then. And this is one of the more comprehensive laws in the country, paid leave laws, in terms of the family members. That's something that we're even looking at now. Do we want it to be even more family members? Because people don't just define family in those ways. So again, it's for caregiving, it's also 60 or 70% of your pay during the time that you're taking the leave. And it can be taken all, or it can be taken at once, or it can be taken incrementally, which many people, if they're caring for a family member and need to take them to appointments, might take half a day or a day every few weeks, as opposed to taking a big chunk of time. So also you apply through the EDD website. And remember, this is really important. Paid family leave is a wage replacement program. It doesn't require your employer to give you your job back when you return from leave. It's just basically an insurance, but we do have other laws that do require you to be able to get your job, keep your job while you're on leave. So the important thing to know, and these two things go together, is that job protection is important when you're taking paid leave. So job protection means basically that your employer must guarantee your job or a comparable job when you return from leave. That you would maintain your benefits during leave if you have health benefits through your employer, and there should be no retaliation against workers for using or attempting to use the leave. And this could be even something like, for example, let's say you were on the day shift, and then when you come back, your employer can't just say that now you're on the night shift, or you were a cashier, but now you're just cleaning bathrooms. I mean, it should be a comparable job. There should be no sense of demotion or retaliation. Your employer is only required to cover your job, however, if you're covered by one of the separate state and federal laws. And the good news in that is that we recently expanded these laws. So the job protection laws, and this can be confusing, but it became a little simpler recently because we expanded the law. So Family Medical Leave Act, the FMLA, that's a federal law that covers you for bonding or for your own serious health condition or caring for a family member. California Family Rights Act, same thing. It has a few differences from the FMLA, but for the most part, it covers some of the same exact things. Pregnancy disability leave is a great law in California that gives pregnant workers time before giving birth and also covers some of the time after they give birth. This is very important because it protects their job and also gives them other accommodations. So the qualifying reasons for the Family Medical Leave Act are if you're taking time off to bond with a newborn, recently adopted child, or foster child, so similar as to paid leave, care for a seriously ill child, parent, or spouse, or care for your own serious health condition, or in some situations, if you are military and you the deployment of your military family, of your child, parent, or spouse, you can take time off for situations related to that.
I was
So qualifying reasons for the California Family Rights Act. It's more than the FMLA now because we recently expanded it. So it is also, of course, to bond with a new child, but you now can take the California Family Rights Act not only for your own serious health condition, but also to care for a seriously ill family member. And that is, oh yeah, if you are not on mute and you're speaking, that's okay. We're all working from home these days, but definitely put yourself on mute. Thanks for that reminder. So you can care for a family member, children, spouses, domestic partners, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, parent-in-law, and siblings. This is important because it very recently expanded to more family members than the FMLA. After a lot of our advocacy last year, it expanded starting January 1st. So now the eligibility requirements for the FMLA and CIFRA: 1 year on the job, 1,250 hours in the year before taking leave. So that's about 25 hours a week. And then for CIFRA, you would only have had to work for an employer with 5 or more employees. So that really expands it to a lot more people. So you also, what you would get is up to 12 weeks of leave per year, and that's all at once or intermittently, restored to the same or equivalent job. And really importantly, you would have a continuation of any health benefits that you have through your employer during that time that you're on leave. It also, very importantly, protects you from discrimination or retaliation. Because a big reason people in the past didn't take leave is the fear of some kind of retaliation, losing their job, not being able to return to work. So importantly, especially for us when we're thinking about the way paid leave and these other laws impact breastfeeding parents, is pregnancy disability leave. It's such a great protection in California. Not every state has it. And it basically is up to 4 months of unpaid job protected leave if you're disabled by pregnancy, childbirth, or a related condition. It impacts you both just for the regular things of pregnancy, maybe needing accommodations in work, but also needing to take time for appointments. For me, for example, when I had my twins and I had a condition or a problem with the pregnancy, I did take more time off. So it really is up to 4 months, either before or after birth, anything related to being pregnant. So it applies to all employers with 5 or more employees. There's also you don't have to have been on the job for a certain length of time. It would apply to you really early in the job if you needed it. It can be used for prenatal care, can be used intermittently, also a continuation of your health benefits. And for an uncomplicated pregnancy, it's really important to know that you can take that time off 4 weeks prior to your due date, even with no complications. And you are covered by this 6 or 8 weeks after birth, depending on if you had a C-section or a vaginal delivery. So, and I think Katie is talking about this part. Or no, I am. It's important to talk to, say one of the things that we want to do, and this is really important, a lot of our legislators don't really know exactly how all of these laws work. So as much as we can educate them, not even so much just about how they work, but the importance of them, just that it's very important for us to have this wage replacement when we're out, and that it's important to have job protection in order to be able to bond with a new child or care for a family member. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in 2020, we helped pass a historic policy called SB 1383. It was the Hannibal Jackson bill. And this was so important because it expanded the job protection through the California Family Rights Act. This is something we coalition partners, Robbie will remember, many of you have been on this journey with us. We have been fighting to expand job protection to more workers, literally for over a decade, because workers really need that protection when they're taking time off to bond or care. So SB 1383, it extended the job protection to workers in businesses of 5 or more. Before, you had to be in a business of 50 or more to qualify for that job protection. So this meant about 6 million more Californians have job protection when they're taking time to bond or care. This is really key for us having caring economy in California. So next slide. Oh, so extended to more family members. I don't know, it looked similar. So you can now take job protected leave for adult children over 18, and before it was younger. You can take it for spouses, domestic partners, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, parent-in-law, and siblings, whereas before it was just your parent or your spouse or your child. Now there's more family members that your job would be protected when you take that leave, and that really helps more diverse families who have, you know, just different generations in their household be able to take that time to care. Yes, I think that you will be able to get access to slides after the presentation. Somebody asked in the chat. So extended job protection to military families. So the other thing that happened is both for paid leave and for job protection, you have extended rights so for example, if you have a family member who's going to be deployed to a foreign country, you can take leave to take time off to just make the different arrangements that you have to make when something like this is happening, arranging childcare, getting parental care, making legal arrangements, those types of things that come up also with military deployment. Yeah, so I think, yeah, so that is very complicated. So having access to the slides after will be great, and it will be provided. So the other thing that we want to do is it's so important for us to maintain what we won last year, that we really want to thank our legislators who voted for SB 1383. It's just, you know, beyond trying to take the next step that we want to do, we also really want to celebrate and strengthen what we won. So we're meeting with a legislator who voted yes on 1383. It's important to thank them. We met with a legislator right after it passed, and he had constituents speaking to him about how important it was, his vote, and they were watching his vote on that you can watch, it's televised, you can watch it online sometimes. And he was visibly moved by how moved his constituents were. And he even said something like, I really didn't even realize how much people care about this. So I really feel like this is going to be an important part of these visits. So they need to know that we're paying attention and that we care, and the extension of job protection really impacts us, or impacts the people that you work with and the people that you're sharing this information with. So as many of you know, in 2020, one of our high points before quarantine was that we in the coalition got to work with all of you. We did something like 55 visits in one day, and we got to talk about expanding job protection. And it was just an amazing year. And we kicked it off in January by doing visits all over the Capitol on this, and then continued to do this via Zoom later in the year. So we really, I think your organizations and all of you were a key part of making this happen this year in 2020. It was one of the high points of the year, really. So just to go over this, and Katie will talk about, you know, how we're doing this next, but we met with 55 legislative offices during January's Advocacy Day. We continued to meet with legislators throughout 2020. We didn't let the quarantine stop us. We just did it on Zoom. People called their legislators. We just had massive amounts of people calling them and providing public comment at legislative hearings. Sometimes these legislative hearings went till midnight and people stayed up and called in. And it was just phenomenal to see. And I really think that the movement for breastfeeding rights is such a key part of this movement, has made a huge difference in us having a strong paid family leave law in California. Handing it over to Katie.
Thanks, Jenya. So I know this is a lot of information. We will be sending out the slides and the recording afterwards, but really, really excited to be planning this event with you. The issue that we really want to focus on, and the bill that we want to focus on this year, is Bill AB 123, which Assemblymember Gonzalez introduced in December, and would increase the wage replacement rate from where it currently is to 60 or 70% to 90%. So that would just make a huge difference for many people. Many workers in California are already struggling to make ends meet on their full paycheck, and so can't afford to take the time that they need. when they're bonding with a new child or, caring for a seriously ill family member. So the goal, of course, is to raise the wage replacement rate to 90%. That would really, because of the way paid family leave is taxed, would come out to about 100% of pay. And especially for low wage workers, it's just critical that we increase the wage replacement rate. But the other piece of this that we want to emphasize is that if no action is taken this year, the bill that actually increased the wage replacement rate to 60 or 70% will expire, and the wage replacement rate will actually go back down to 55%, which we really don't want to happen. So it's not as important to remember kind of all of these details, and the visits will give you, a fact sheet and everything that you need to be able to see this information. But if you have a story about being unable to take paid family leave because the wage replacement rate was too low, that's really important to share in the legislative meeting. So as I just said, you won't have all of the answers about the policies that we're advocating for. Like, we want you to have this background so that you can feel confident, so that you can share it with people in your community, because we know that you're meeting with people all of the time who need this information. That was actually how I came to connect with the California Work and Family Coalition, because I am also a lactation consultant and was working in a hospital, and my patients were asking me about paid family leave constantly all of the time, and I didn't have the answers and the information that I needed to support them. And so that is why I am where I'm at today. And I still draw on those experiences in legislative visits. So I think that's really where, you all can play a really important role in sharing the experiences and why these issues are so important. So again, just the importance of speaking from your own experience. I mean, you all are already experts in breastfeeding and chest feeding and why that's so important. And when we were developing the goals for this Advocacy Day with the amazing planning committee of California Breastfeeding Coalition members, that was a goal that people thought was really important, was to educate legislators just about the importance of human milk. Your own experience is really the most powerful perspective you can share with a legislator. And legislators meet with different organizations and people constantly. So we want them to connect with you and remember you. When you share your story, that's a way that you can make a human connection with the person that you're meeting with, whether it's a legislator or a staff. Erica Dorsey, who's an amazing CBC member, shared something I think is really powerful, which is that when we share stories, we can remind lawmakers of our common humanity, and we really want to do that in these meetings. So I'm just going to pause for 1 second because we have folks who are in the waiting room who I want to let in. Okay. So when we're thinking about how to share your story, it can be helpful to sort of gather your thoughts and think about how you would organize what you want to share. So if you're sharing your story in a legislative meeting, it's always good to start with your name. If you are a constituent of the person that you're meeting with, definitely say that. They really pay attention to when constituents are in the meeting. And a lot of times that's a way to make a personal connection with your legislator as well, is just talking about, living in the district, being in the district. Then sharing your personal story. I think we have a couple of folks maybe who need to mute. So when you're thinking about sharing your story, for instance, when we're thinking about wage replacement, why is this issue important to you? Like, what experiences you've had, or maybe the clients or people that you work with are having, what challenges are they having with wage replacement not being enough or taking paid family leave, right? So why is this important to you? And then that connects to the solution. So if, Bill AB 123 were to pass, it would address the problem that I experienced by making sure, that other people are able to take paid family leave, so that the experience I have had doesn't happen to someone else. And then it's also important to make the ask. So ask, will you, if you're meeting with a legislator, will you support this bill? Or if you're meeting a staff person, like, do you think that the assembly member or the senator will support this bill.
Katie, it's Deb Albert.
Yes.
I wanted to add
Go
two
for
things to that slide. We have to thank someone for SB 1383. So I would assume that would go between the introduction and the personal story. And then I also wanted to add that COVID stories would be an excellent thing to add to this.
Absolutely.
Taking a family member or
Yeah, so I think this could work in a couple of different ways. Like you could have multiple people share their stories. So someone could share a story about 1383, for instance. And when you're figuring out kind of the group roles, it's helpful to think about like who in your group connects with the different issues. And I definitely think the COVID perspective is really powerful. That's what lawmakers are really wanting to hear from people right now. And you all have such experience just seeing what challenges people are facing right now. So some just quick tips when thinking about sharing your story. Try to keep it short. Share your own story. Your own experience is what's most powerful. Share only what you're comfortable sharing. You don't have to share every detail. And a lot of times people have really emotional experiences that they're not sure they're comfortable sharing. So you can leave parts of your story out if you don't want to share that in a legislative meeting. That said, emotions are okay. A lot of times the part of your story that's most emotional is the most impactful or the most powerful. So if you do cry or get upset sharing your story, like that is okay. And I have cried in legislative meetings listening to other people's stories. So I just feel like these are emotional issues, and it's okay for us to feel whatever we're feeling about them. And another tip that can help sometimes is to prepare something written if you're nervous. So it could either be a script that you read, although if you do that, sometimes it can sound a little bit practice. So it's helpful to kind of practice ahead of time, having it next to you and not like reading from the paper. But sometimes people will write down kind of bullet points of what they want to share, just so that they remember all of the details of what they want to share. All right, so now we are going to practice how this might look together as an exercise. And then at the end, we're going to kind of put it all together and talk about what to expect and in a legislative meeting and different roles that you could have in that meeting. All right, so thinking about wage replacement as an example. So these are just a couple of prompts to think about, what is the problem, right? So if you were unable to take paid family leave due to low wage replacement, how did that impact you? Do you see clients who face this issue? And how has COVID highlighted it? And then thinking about what is the solution? If the wage replacement rate were 90%, how would that impact you or your clients, or how would that have changed your experience? So what I'd love to do is just take a couple of minutes for people to think about this and then enter into the chat what's coming to mind for them about how they connect with this issue. And Angelica's going to kind of keep an eye on the chat because it's hard for me to see while sharing my screen. So Angelica, let me know if people are entering anything in the chat.
So far, we don't have anyone.
There are no wrong answers here, right? Like nobody's going to, it's just kind of to help get you thinking about how you connect to this.
So we just got one from Joyce. She said, I would return to work and choose not to breastfeed without paid family leave. And we also have one from Leslie, and she said, many of my patients, I'm a nurse practitioner, told me they had to stop breastfeeding because they had to go back to work. And Arissa also said, I would have personally stayed out longer than 10 weeks if wage replacement was 90%. I was so unclear with how much money I would be getting and worried we wouldn't be able to pay our mortgage if I didn't go back to work quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think those stories are really, really impactful to share. I mean, I absolutely have talked to parents who didn't meet their breastfeeding goals because they didn't have enough time out of work. I think, you know, it's really hard for people to make it already on their full paycheck a lot of the time. So, you know, having to take a pay cut when your expenses are going up because you've had a new baby or are caring for someone is just not something that we should ask of folks. Any other sort of entries into the chat? It looks like people are
We have
starting to.
a few more. So Amalia said, I was able to take leave but only received 60% of income. My husband and I had to plan ahead, saving money and cutting back costs to be able to afford the time I took leave. And even then, that was difficult. We also have one from Nora. She says, I'm working with families who were forced to return to work too soon, then leave their child with a daycare. Oh, it's going so fast. Daycare center. Multiple families contracted COVID-19 as a result. They were unable to nurse because of returning to work before establishing a milk supply. Samantha also said many WIC parents must return to work within a few days or weeks of giving birth, so have trouble getting started breastfeeding or supplement with formula right away because they don't think breastfeeding will work. Um, there's I see clients that couldn't afford taking time off work because they are paying childcare, which takes up a huge chunk of their pay. Breastfeeding is hard when they are working 10 to 12 hours a day and they often quit. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Angelica, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's crazy that, it's so hard. My sister also, when she gave birth to her first child, she wasn't able to breastfeed because she had to go right into work. So it's crazy hearing all of these stories and how real it is.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing all of that. And thank you, Angelica, for highlighting what people are sharing. Feel free to continue in the chat. I feel like these are exactly the kinds of stories and experiences that we need to share with lawmakers to really humanize this issue and make them think about like how this is impacting people both in their district and all over the state of California. So what to expect in a legislative meeting. So now we're going to kind of put everything together. So you may be meeting directly with the legislator, or you might be meeting with a staff person, and both kinds of meetings are really valuable. Staff people are often really learning about the details of the policy and are making recommendations to the legislator. So it can be just as helpful to meet with a staff person as directly with a legislator. And right now we have meetings set up with mostly with staff, just so you know what to expect. You and the legislative office will have the same Zoom link. And we suggest enabling the waiting room feature just because it allows everyone to kind of get ready before you let in the staff person that you're meeting with. And we will help support the group leaders who will be running the Zoom to make sure they have everything that they need to make that happen. So meeting roles, every group is going to have a group leader. Debbie's going to talk a little bit more about that role in a minute because we're looking for more volunteers. And then you can decide in your own group how many speakers you want to have and what each speaker is going to address. So it's nice to have one person to introduce the meeting. As Debbie was pointing out, you can share a personal story about multiple issues, right? Like someone can share a personal issue about personal story about job protection. Someone else could speak to the importance of breastfeeding and human milk. Someone else could speak to the wage replacement issue. And again, just remember, like, your job is to explain why these policies are so important. If you don't have the answer, you can to a specific policy question, you can always tell the office that you'll research it and get back to them later, and we'll help you find out whatever that answer is. And we'll also be providing materials and talking points and things like that, so you can review those before the meetings. And then it's important to make the ask, right? So make sure that you actually ask the legislator or the staff, do they think they'll be able to support this issue? And then there are also folks who may not want to have a big speaking role in the meeting, but their presence is still really important. So I like to call those people supporters. So you don't have to have a big speaking role. You can just introduce yourself at the beginning of the meeting as well. So Debbie, do you want to talk a little bit about the group leaders?
Sure. Initially you get this feeling like this is a lot. I don't know if I want to take the responsibility of doing this, but especially when you actually have to walk around the Capitol and find the rooms. So this is a little easier virtually because you just have to know how to get everybody on Zoom and go from one meeting to the other on Zoom, which makes it a little easier. When you get together as a group, we want everybody to pick a role, and we have the role of, all of us have to introduce ourselves. So we're all going to introduce ourselves. We're going to say thank you very much for voting for SB 1383 if that legislator did that, and if not, we'll just leave that out. And then we go on to talking about our stories and giving them an idea of what the need is. And then the biggest problem that we have at the moment is not necessarily knowing everything about ABC 123, which we hope Gonzalez will be able to help us fill in. But for now, we do know that it would help increase things to 90%, and it'll go back down to 55%. Do we know exactly when that would happen?
It would happen at the end of this year, I believe, if no action is taken.
Okay, so this is important for this legislative session, because if we don't do anything, it will definitely go down to 55% at the end of this year. And so many families are already suffering financially due to either COVID or losing jobs or a combination thereof. And so it's really important for us to push this. And then once all of our story, we really basically want 2 quick stories. Because I think if we do more than that, it's going to be too long and they're going to try to push us along. So go in for the ask, and we have one particular member, depending on how many people we have, it could be the group leader that goes back for the ask. But most of the time we have at least 4 or 5 people, and we can have that one person who wants to slip in and say, do we have your support for ABC 123? I love that, by the way. It's so cool. Very easy to say. It slips right off your tongue. And then, of course, we need to send an email thank you to the office after the meeting. But Katie and her crowd have been very helpful with stuff like that. So, that's basically what happens at the end.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That was such a good summary. And we are looking for more group leaders. No experience is necessary. So if you would like to take on this role, please let us know in the chat, and we will follow up with you and make sure that you have all the support that you need, because the group leader really helps to get everybody to their meetings and make sure that people have a good experience. And I know that there are a lot of members of the California Breastfeeding Coalition who did this last year or have experience doing it as well. So we welcome anyone who's interested. We'd be happy to support you. So Debbie already gave a really good summary of how the meeting can kind of flow. So we can see that here, kind of how that would look. I think that her suggestion about having 2 stories is right on. And so, thinking about how to cover these different goals that we identified of talking about the importance of human milk, social supports like paid leave, kind of into those stories. I also just wanted to highlight, like, sometimes the staffer or legislator has questions, so it's helpful to keep the presentation part of the meeting pretty short, as Debbie was saying, to allow for that kind of back and forth and more connection. And then, yes, you can see making the ask and then thanking them at the end of the meeting, and then also sending a follow-up thank you email. So just some really quick tips, which Debbie mostly covered, which is awesome. So keep the presentation part of the meeting pretty short. It's okay if you don't get to everything. That can happen. Sometimes the discussion just goes, in a place that you didn't expect, but it is really important for someone to have that role of bringing it back to the ask to make sure that you get to that. And then, exactly as Debbie was saying, it's important for everyone to have a role in the meeting, but not everyone will be able to speak at length. All right, so with that, any questions that anyone has? And you can enter them in the chat, and I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions unmuted as well.
This is Erica. Hi, everyone. I just had a question about, so for the group leaders, when you say that you'll just be helping everyone get on the like different calls, so is that just going to be like, okay, we're ending that Zoom call and now let's get back in there for this next call and make sure everyone's on again, and then we're letting in the legislative aid or whoever we're speaking with?
We're going to have a schedule, Erica.
Okay.
So we'll have, depending on your district, hopefully you'll be able to do your district, and that would be great because they really want to talk to their own constituents. I know in Sacramento, we're kind of lucky that way. We do have people who are already here and they'll be available. And so, we're going to definitely be saying, we live here. This is important to us because we're in your district. And that's very important to these legislators. They want to talk to their people and find out what their constituents want. So it'll be scheduled from 1:30 to 3.
Exactly. And Erica, each group will have their own schedule. What we're trying to do when we have the Zoom links is actually just have one link for all of the meetings so that you all can just stay where you are and let in the staffers. I think there might be one meeting where the office is providing a Zoom link. If that's the case, then you would be joining their Zoom. So let me actually skip ahead for 1 second to logistics.
Thank you. That makes sense. That's what I was hoping to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, no, planning this virtually is definitely, there's a lot of different pieces moving. So what we're going to be doing in the morning is in our main session after the welcome, the training, and the speaker, who we expect to be Assemblymember Gonzalez, will speak in the morning. And then we're going to break out into our different groups so that you all can make sure that everybody in your group has the links, has the schedule, and knows what to do and what their roles are going to be. So thank you for asking that question. Angelica, are there any questions coming up in the chat?
There was 2, but I answered them. It was about the groups, but we haven't sent that out yet. We're still finalizing meetings.
Yes, so I would say expect to get your groups on Wednesday. We are working with an amazing planning committee of California Breastfeeding Coalition members. So please, if you're on that committee, give yourself a shout out in the chat, who are working really hard to follow up with offices and make sure that we have meetings scheduled. But just from my past experience, sometimes there are some meetings that get scheduled a little bit last minute, but so we'll plan to send out final schedules on Wednesday, but we'll get materials and other information to you all before then.
I was going to add, we had so many fun things in the middle, like the Capitol needing security plus Martin Luther King holiday. It's been a joy.
Yeah, so they've definitely had to be doing a lot of follow-up. We all have. So we do have meetings on the calendar. Really appreciate everybody who's helping to make that happen. And we will also have in the afternoon as sort of a 911 or I'm lost Zoom link that Angelica and I will be in for the whole afternoon session. So if anyone is lost and doesn't know where to go, you can just come back to that same Zoom link from the morning. We'll be there. We'll have all of the schedules and can send people where they need to go. Any other questions coming up in the chat?
Katie, I'd like to thank you and everyone at California Work and Family Coalition with helping us to organize this day and working with the planning committee and all the planning committee members. It's just been awesome. It's like, this is something I don't worry about. I know you guys are handling everything. I appreciate that you all care. And I just want to emphasize all your stories matter. So you know, you've already seen we had I think we had a strong impact on the legislation that was passed last year. We started the year off with advocating, and then I attended a lot of the legislative meetings virtually, but it was just a great kickoff, and I think the same thing's going to happen this year. You guys will all have an impact on these decisions that are being made. So I want to thank you all. And I also want to suggest that maybe we set up a group on the Whova app for everyone that's attending, because that's another way to communicate very quickly. So make sure you have downloaded the Whova app, and then you can also have it on your desktop, and let's use that tool because it works really well and you know how to use it. So thank you all.
Thank you, Robbie, and everyone at the Breastfeeding Coalition. Your stories are so impactful. It really makes a difference when you share them. And I really think that all of the work that you all did last year had a significant impact on 1383. So yeah, we just couldn't be more excited about doing this with you all again. I'm sad that we can't take the Capitol by storm because it was really fun to run into you all in the halls last year between meetings and kind of hear how everything was going. But hopefully next year we'll be able to do that. And the virtual format is great as well. All right, let's see. So just a reminder, if you get lost, you can rejoin the main Zoom session. We also just wanted to let you know that we, at the Work and Family Coalition, we have downloadable guides and content, you know, more basic information. We just went through a website revamp due to our fabulous communications manager, Mia. So check it out if you haven't seen it already. And then we did just want to let you know also about Paid Family Leave Fridays, which are hosted
That's a cute
every Friday. I know, don't we look cute?
Sorry.
Every Friday at 3, this is Mia and I talking about the importance of advocacy a couple of weeks ago. So feel free to follow us on Instagram and you can check out those kind of bite-sized chats on Fridays. So thank you all so much. Any other questions before we go? We have about 2 minutes, and please feel free to, I think you all have my email from sending out the training link. So feel free to reach out to myself or Angelica or Jenya if you have any other questions. And we're just really excited to do this with you next week. All right, any other questions happening in the chat?
We had a question. So is it just one bill we will be discussing with legislators? And it is just AB 123, right?
Yeah, so we, at the California Work and Family Coalition, we really focus on paid leave. And this increasing the wage replacement rate has been a long time priority for us. We've also worked on lactation accommodation bills like the SB 142 a couple of years ago, but there aren't any lactation accommodation bills that we are aware of, just so that you all know that. But yeah, it's just the one bill that we'll be focusing on.
And also thanking for 1383, because we want to make sure that our legislators don't get the idea of doing anything that would roll any of that back. So we really want them to know how much we care about that if possible. Yeah. And there were just questions about the laws, and I think these slides will go out, so that'll be helpful. And we also have resources that I think it's just important to you kind of have to read about the laws. Sometimes it's very hard to keep it all in your head because it's way too complicated for all of us. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. This was great.
All right. Well, with that, we will wrap up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but it was really great to see everyone, and we will see you next week at the Advocacy Day. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Katie, were you recording? Oh, okay.